Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome to STEM Unplugged, a monthly podcast designed to help you learn about STEM initiatives and advance STEM awareness. I'm your host of the show, Kelly Green, the Chief Operations Officer of SciTech Institute, a collaborative nonprofit organization making STEM connections in Arizona and beyond. In the studio, I have my co-host, Chief Science Officer of the Year, Valentina.
Hi, everyone.
In this episode of STEM Unplugged, we will be exploring tech companies supporting our communities.
Our guests today include Roxanne Wingate, the Senior Community Relations Specialist from Cox Communications, and we also have Matt Clark joining us. He is the Director of Arizona Government Affairs for Verizon. Welcome to you both. Thanks for joining us for STEM Unplugged.
Thanks for having us.
Roxanne, in your role, you support Cox's community outreach efforts, including Cox's Connect to Compete program. I understand this special program helps reach low-income students. Can you tell us more about it?
Yes, and thank you for having me. Yes, so Cox Communications has been focused on bridging the digital divide since 2012 through our Connect to Compete program. Our Connect to Compete program helps connect families online to affordable internet, and this is for qualifying low-income families. So qualifying families can receive our high-speed internet for $9.95 a month, and that includes no installation fees, no deposits, and no contracts. It also includes a free Wi-Fi modem rental. All of this to help bridge the digital divide in our community.
Yeah, and given the current situation, the internet has become an essential tool, especially for work and distance learning. And getting more into the specifics, who qualifies for the program and where can interested families sign up?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. So the digital divide has been an issue for many years. And now with COVID-19, digital divide has been highlighted. And that definitely has happened with schools now moving to online remote learning and having more students needing a reliable broadband connection in order to complete their school curriculum. So qualifying families include families who have a school-age child in the household, that's kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade, and families who receive government assistance benefits through programs like the National School Lunch Program, which is where families receive free or reduced lunch, or families can receive SNAP or TANF benefits, or they live in public housing. Any interested families who want to take advantage of our Connect to Compete program can do so by visiting our website, cox.com/connect to compete, or they can call our 1-855 number at 1-855-825-1466.
That's awesome. So Matt, at Verizon, you serve as the Government Relations Director for Verizon in all of Arizona, and you help to navigate the challenges and opportunities that face Verizon as it grows its worldwide telecommunications network. How has Verizon shifted to engage communities and provide support during the pandemic?
Well, I think first and foremost, the biggest challenge we had to make was once the pandemic hit, and it was almost an overnight switch to moving many people to home. So not only did we face the challenges as a company of moving most of our workforce from office settings to at home, but also recognizing that the traffic on the network went up significantly. Yeah, we were looking at, I believe it was 800 times the amount of volume that went out during Mother's Day, which is our number one call day and whatnot. So we had significant movement on the network, data usage, whatnot. So that was the first challenge, was making sure that the network stayed up to date and ready to assist as it moved forward. Some of the things that we've looked at moving as we've gone to assist the community in the pandemic has been kind of fearful. First, we signed the FCC pledge, which ensured that we did not cut off service or deny service or whatnot for 30 days, and then we extended it till the end of June. So that was one of the things we want to make sure that none of our customers worried about paying their cell phone bill or being cut off at a time of need.
That's important.
Yeah, it was. It was incredible, and a lot of people took advantage of it. And so we wanted to make sure that people were aware of what was going on and that they could get up-to-date information and stay in touch with their families and whatnot as it was going through and just take one worry off their plate. Some of the other things we did was, we looked at waiving internet and voice service charges for our lifetime customers for 2 billing cycles. We expanded our data usage to all of our Verizon Innovative Learning Schools. So that was one of the things that we recognized is these kids were going into the homes, many without having internet access or access to these kind of connectivity and whatnot. So we wanted to make sure that there was data usage there that could access through the schools. Those are just a few of the things we did, waiving fees on new and upgraded lines, different things like that. So we just wanted to make sure that as everybody was dealing the transition and being forced into their homes or, having their businesses at least temporarily paused, that we took one worry off their plate as they move forward. So
yeah, I think that was really important for those, essential versus non-essential versus how do I keep my children entertained, right? I don't have children of my own, but as a previous teacher, right? The idea of if you only have one or two devices and one of them's your cell phone, how do you not run out of data? So I think that's a really important aspect of what happened. So thank you to Verizon for that. You mentioned the Innovative Learning Schools. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Innovative Learning Schools?
So Verizon has a program that seeks to bridge the digital divide. And what we do is we identify middle schools and at-risk areas, and we provide data and technology and connectivity and devices. And so what we'll do is we'll onboard the teachers. So they'll come in from the middle school, the area we choose. Teachers will come in, we'll walk them through how to use the devices, how to connect on. And so we have a training seminar for them. And then in the fall, we bring in all of the students in the middle school and we give them their devices. And it's actually kind of like Christmas. So they come in, they're excited, and they keep them through their time there. And it's just a way to say, okay, we recognize that in elementary school, they're probably not responsible enough to have the devices and use them on a regular basis. But we also we recognize that these are the schools and the tools in which they'll be using moving forward. So we want to make sure that we introduce it as quickly as possible in the most responsible way possible. So that way they can use them in their schoolwork moving forward.
So I wanted to bring Valentina in on this point, right? As you're going to be 8th grade this year. Yes. And so, for all of the rest of the adults in the room, if we think back to what 8th grade looked like, I can't imagine the focus on the digital learning aspect that now your school already had it, right? We use the Google platform for the CSO program, but the idea that this has become the norm, right? How are you feeling about this digital connection, the expectation of you are self-managing as a student without that in-class interaction with a teacher? How are you feeling about that?
Well, I definitely think it's amazing how we've been able to adapt, doing everything virtually. And it's definitely amazing how that program gives students the resources to still succeed in today's digital world. So I definitely think it's amazing how we've been able to adapt given the current situation.
Yeah, and same with Cox, right? The commitment to those families, those communities around the state of Arizona. And, SciTech is really hoping to build out our ecosystem hubs and identify locations that maybe don't have connectivity at all. And I think some of our work with our local native tribes has really identified that, it's not even a Cox location. So building out that network and building the broadband across the state and the collaboration between Verizon, Cox, and Viasat, for example, and these other companies that are really trying to get everyone connected. Because it's important for students to know we're doing the best that we can as a group of STEM individuals, STEM industries. I wanted to ask, what are some of the successes you've experienced with these tech innovation and programs? Roxanne, do you want to start and maybe give us a story about some of the success you've either witnessed or experienced as a member of Cox Communications?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, most recently, as a response to COVID-19, just like Verizon, Cox Communications, we also joined efforts with the FCC pledge and made sure to keep America connected, right, through that pledge. And one of the other enhancements that we also did with our Connect to Compete program was all new Connect to Compete customers who enrolled between March 13th and May 15th, as we were ending that school year, we provided free service up until July 15th for those new Connect to Compete customers. In addition, we also increased our internet speeds from 25 to 50 through July 15th. And we did this because we realized many, students were now going work from school from home model. Parents were also going to that work from home model, that competing bandwidth was definitely something that was a new normal in households. So we wanted to make sure we increased the internet speeds for our Connect to Compete customers for that. In response to COVID-19, we've been able to link arms with other, corporate partners who have come and really joined resources to help many of our families in need. And when I say in need, when we talk about the digital divide, it's, devices, it's a reliable broadband connection. We recently had a partnership with the Arizona Cardinals and State Farm, where we gifted 150 families free devices as well as 1 year free internet. And this was
awesome.
Again, something that we did in partnership with the Arizona Cardinals and State Farm with families from Roosevelt Elementary School District and Phoenix Elementary School District.
Yeah. And if you think about that one device, right, it really could be the changing factor. Maybe you don't, I mentioned your phone, but there are some families that don't have reliable service, or they're not on a plan, or, they're paying month by month. So I think that is incredible what you guys were able to do. What about you, Matt? Any cool experiences or stories?
Sure. I think one of the cool things that we did is before my time at Verizon, I had worked for the governor's office. So as you can imagine, COVID hits, they suspend schools, then they suspend schools for the year. And there's a desire to kind of get hotspots and any kind of devices into the hands, especially in some of the communities where, like you said, you have dad or mom's phone, and that's kind of serving as the main device that's in the home. And so one of the things that we did was we got together with our team. We started thinking, like, how can we help the state out? What are we doing? Because, our state wasn't the only one that was dealing with it. And all of a sudden, the supply chain that had been just kind of getting ready for the summer, where maybe there's a promotion here or there, they're off the shelves. And it's not like you can just walk into a Verizon store and say, hey, I need 5,000 hotspots. Can you get them to me tomorrow? So I'm sure Cox kind of experienced the same thing, is that we were waiting for the supply chain to catch up. We still can't get sanitizing wipes or
toilet paper. Toilet paper's starting to come back. It's making a comeback.
Yeah,
it did.
Sure.
I was at Costco and saw paper towels. I almost gave them a big hug. Went around and started hugging some of the people in, but had to do my social distancing. But anyhow, one of the things that we did is we huddled together, and one of our government sales team recognized in their invoices that the state had purchased 200 hotspots but never turned them on.
Oh.
So we got in touch with the Department of Administration and others and said, look, we have these in our records. Let's search through and see if we can find them. They found them, and then over Easter weekend, what we did was they dropped them off at one of our storefronts, and we had our employees, because the stores were closed, over Easter weekend, test all of their power, upload them with SIM cards, and get them ready and go out the door, so that by Monday or Tuesday, the governor and the superintendent were able to announce, look, we've got 200 hotspots that we're going to start giving out to some of the schools and areas. So that was one of the things about working at Verizon that I really appreciate so much, is how everybody thinks about outside the box and looks at where there's problems that need to be solved and said, okay, we can't do X, but maybe we can do Y, and then kind of ran to the problem and came up with a solution. And then, like I said, doing it over Easter weekend, where many people sacrifice family time to really make sure that they could help the state out, so that these were ready to go as quickly as possible on Monday morning, so that students wouldn't go without for longer than necessary. So
that's pretty powerful, right? We say at the Chief Science Officers, don't just hope it happens, make it happen. So I think that's awesome. What about you, Valentina? Have you experienced any, significant opportunities or engage in anything different or exciting during the pandemic?
I definitely think during the pandemic, it's been very cool being able to communicate with many other CSOs in the program, like internationally. So I definitely think within our network, we've been communicating to many other CSOs that I haven't really gotten the chance to communicate with before.
Yeah, so even though you've traveled to Sonora, Mexico to train new CSOs, you had the opportunity to connect with Chief Science Officers in Kenya, for example, in Kuwait, or even Pennsylvania and Oregon, and having these group calls has been really cool. And I know both you and Roxanne have been part of our STEM community lunchtime conversations. So the idea that people are at least still joining those Zoom calls and really trying to stay connected and keep, the finger on the pulse of what's going to happen next, and what does school look like, and how is this going to go forward? So at Cox, what are some of the ideas? Are things going to stay the same after things get back to normal? Is there a new normal? What are we kind of thinking about when school maybe goes back in session? I think there's a lot of controversy right now, but what is Cox planning to do when we return to normal, if there is a return to normal?
Yeah, well, it's hard to say when and what that's going to look like, right? But what we can do is prepare for the next upcoming weeks. And as we prepare for the back to school season, there's something that we realize we're going to have more parents and more students who are in need of, reliable broadband connection to make sure that they still have the right tools in the household to do remote learning. So what we actually are excited to announce is we're going to offer another 60 days free for new Connect to Compete customers who enroll between July 21st through September 30th. So
awesome.
Again, this is going to assist more families as they navigate that new school year, and looking at what tools do I need in my household in order to have my students successfully navigate kinder, first, second, to all all the way up to high school. What are the tools that we need? So we want to make sure that we're there providing a reliable broadband connection for families in need.
Yeah, can you imagine a kindergarten classroom? I don't even want to think about it.
I did it last year. My son was in kindergarten. From March to May was probably the nicest word I can think that's safe on the radio is interesting.
Same here. I had a kindergartner and a second grader, and I'm preparing for a first grader.
Oh, bless both of your hearts.
Yeah.
I just got a dog. He's in the studio with us, and he's pretty spoiled. So I could not imagine. So as a parent, right? So let's talk about that for a second. How are you feeling as professionals? You're both very prominent in your role at your organizations. How does that impact your children being home all day with you and needing to complete their assignments? Or how did you feel, or if you're willing to share, right? What were some of the challenges you faced?
Well, for me, what was really successful is to definitely have, a routine and a set aside, time frame for our children. And for us, both my husband and I are fortunate to work for great companies who, understand this new merge of work and home life together. So for us, it was just, setting those routines and, setting expectations with our children and having that conversation with them. And we were very fortunate to have wonderful teachers provide amazing curriculum online, engaging for our students, through Google Classroom, through Zoom. It's amazing to see what our teachers are now having to do and, bring out into our communities with our students. So, for us, we just found a nice little routine that worked for us. And now we got a taste of what it looks like with online remote learning. So we're kind of prepared for this upcoming school year.
Yeah. Big shout out to those teachers, right? Like I said, I was in the classroom before, and I'm truly blessed to be in this position I am now, but a lot of my friends are still teaching. And so that transition is tough. You love working with your students, and there's a growth that happens, from the beginning to the end of the year. And it's sad that they didn't get to celebrate the end. And I worry for them because the beginning of the year is such a powerful connecting period. But Matt, what about you?
I just want to make sure that I get a copy of this so that my wife understands how much I'm going to praise her at this point in time. If it weren't for her, I don't know how we would have been able to get it all on board. She set up the schedules in the morning. She helped me kind of navigate through it and did it great. All the while, she would be a week on, a week off. So it really wouldn't have happened without her kind of organizing and getting it together. I think the challenge is again, I have two were girls. One was in 5th grade, one was in 3rd, and then my son was a kindergartner. And so my girls were very good at being able to download their assignments, go through them and whatnot. And mostly what I was able to do was check it and kind of get them to think a different way, especially when it came to some math and different things like that. But my son, it was all hands on deck. And what the challenge is that, and I'm sure you recognize it as well with a kindergartner, is that you'd sit down and you'd go through the story and you'd start them writing, you'd do whatever, and then you'd have to jump on a conference call that went an hour. You'd come back and my son is chasing the dog with a stick, thinking it's the funniest thing in the world. And I'm just checking all the knives drawers to make sure that nothing sharp is out and it's just the stick that he's chasing him with. And so, it was very much chase the squirrel mentality with him. And if I wasn't on top of him 100%, he kind of lost interest because he's a 6-year-old boy that doesn't want to sit in front of a computer all day listening to how, whether or not they went camping or what they ate or, who squashed the bug or whatnot. So you had that kind of element there, but we were able to, I feel we were able to at least tread water and maintain because the teachers had set up curriculum. They knew what was necessary to get them to the end of the year. And then everybody could kind of take a breath and reassess. I think the challenge moving forward, and this kind of goes to your earlier question, is the new normal versus what it looked like and what's happening. And it's one of the things that I was raised in education. My mom was one of the business education community folks, worked for Motorola, did that for years before she retired. So education was one of those things we talked about around the dinner table growing up. And I think what we're kind of not really grasping is the emergency situation that many at-risk students face from not having it. So not only did we take many of these students in neighborhoods where it was a challenge and in schools where it was a challenge and remove that safety net in the school and in the teachers. We then put them in front of a device, many of which, or, even if it's a small percentage, have never used nor know how to operate. Now we're expecting them again, and that was just to get them to the end. So they're already behind beginning. Then we give them something they don't know how to use to expect them to get to the end and tread water. And again, I have all the resources in the world. Great company, wonderful wife, smart kids, time and flexibility could make it work. And I feel like we were treading water.
Right.
I can only imagine what it's like to be the single mom who has to go to work and has, her mother or father come in and watch the kids. Maybe they don't speak English. Maybe they do, whatever it is, but give them a device and say, here, grandma, teach Timmy how to figure out his algebra. And so you're
grandma's never learned how to log on.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and so you have that element.
Important.
So we already are behind the 8 ball with these kids. And now we're starting school again online. So it's like we're taking the problem we had before, putting it in front of it again. And we hope that we've gotten them to where they can at least log on and have some kind of understanding. And I know, but how do we make sure that this small gap does not become a chasm, where it's we've set these kids back years. And so one of the things that we've looked at, and one of the things I've been given the flexibility to do through Verizon is work with some nonprofits to ensure that these at-risk kids can work with, say, a Boys and Girls Club or a YMCA or whatnot, where they create the safe space where they can log in with somebody who knows what's doing and can kind of walk it through in a parental role. So again, even if mom has to go to work or dad has to go to work or both have to go to work, the kids can go to a safe place, get their instructional learning online with other peers that are socially distanced and whatnot, following all the safety guidelines. And at least we can maybe keep them treading water or get them to where they need to go. But secondarily, the way that I look at it is not just fixing the problem now, but into the future is how can we now leverage what we're doing to improve moving forward. So we go back to the new. We get a vaccine. We whatever happens when we go back to the normal and they're in school and they're whatnot. How do we now use the tools that we've gifted to these organizations to supplement that learning? Are there ways that we can work with the Boys and Girls Club and the local schools and whatnot to make sure that we start to backfill some of the knowledge that's been lost because of the COVID pandemic? So those are kind of the focus areas that we're looking at moving forward.
I love that because, again, as a teacher, there's so many different ways a child learns. And when you have a classroom of 35 middle schoolers, I taught 6th grade math, you're not going to reach them all with the same activity, and you have to differentiate. And so knowing that we just empowered the teachers to get creative and be online and learn how to use these different classroom portals where they could store all of the information and post resources. Teachers are incredible, and they really were in survival mode, just like the parents. But the idea that they experienced something that they were not planning. They were not ready to say, hey, let's all get online and create a Moodle and let's all create a Google Classroom. And, how do I turn this into a video so that my students can rewatch it? So kudos to all of those teachers out there that really took this opportunity to now they have those resources for years to come. Even if we return to the classroom, I personally here at SciTech, right, I've been challenging with our K-12 advisory committee of, how do we change education? This is an opportunity for us to stop, think about the classroom, no more rows, collaborative group, project-based learning, integrate technology, advance STEM awareness so that then they can, like the chief science officers, have that opportunity to develop those skills of working together in a group, managing a project, understanding how it will relate to the real world. So I really think we, despite all of the horrible aspects of the pandemic, we really are at this incredible turning point. And we have companies like both of your companies really willing to say, we just gave you a whole bunch. What can we do to actually leverage that and train the teachers, train the students, train the parents, train the grandparents? Yeah. And I think that's important because even Valentina, right? You're an older sister. Yeah. So I think a lot of families, which I, was able to communicate with a variety of different people, the older siblings became the educators. And while that's very important, I absolutely adore my 3 older sisters. I don't want them teaching me my math. Yeah. And so the idea that we need to recognize that you also need those opportunities to improve your learning, not necessarily just manage your brother's learning. So I think we're at a really cool turning point.
As a student, I definitely think that guidance and that being able to stay engaged does make the profound difference in the learning environment. So.
Yeah, and facilitation, I think, is the key word, maybe.
And I think some of the hope is that we use these lessons learned or these technologies available to, like I said, supplement. So, for example, if you have a sick kid that catches the flu and is home for a week, or a kid who breaks his leg and is home for a week or two because they have to be on bed rest or whatnot, it's not just COVID.
I had my tonsils out. I was home for a week.
There you go. How can we use an online learning school to where they can get it? And whether it's recording lessons that are given that can then be played back on YouTube through the district, maybe district sets up a YouTube channel, streaming live, different things like that, where it's, okay, all of a sudden we can completely re-envision because we're forced to deal with maybe what's a year-long challenge. But how do we now take these lessons learned and not fall back into the same old mold, but use them to kind of kickstart it forward and really kind of build in or benefit and take kind of these business practices that we've all learned and gotten better at and apply them to an educational learning that really, really kind of jumpstarts these students and gets them thinking in different, and like you said, collaborative learning and others. Not that I'm an education expert. From Verizon's standpoint, we just want to make sure these kids are in a safe environment where they can learn. But
Verizon's really understanding that it takes the discussion to get it started. And I think Cox is the same way, right? They've been working with us for years. And the idea of, let's talk about it. What do you see as a challenge? Who can we bring to the table? What do we, privileged individuals, think is a challenge? But then let's actually ask the person that we're trying to engage with. And I think that's the nice part and the new work that we're really doing at SciTech. We have Katie in the room as well, who's working on the advanced manufacturing and advanced technologies piece of understanding what's available in Arizona and really getting people to kind of look up and say, I get it. It's a tough situation, but we have so many people willing to make it better. Let's come to the table and talk about how we do that. And, I think at Cox, right, you guys, this family organization, and as a parent, Roxanne, I think you really have a nice, role in this whole discussion of how do we prepare the adults, right? What do we need to say to those adults that, look, we get it. It's going to be if we don't go back until October in person. What are we going to do? How are we going to help them? What could we do as these three companies, these three organizations, and our chief science officers? What kind of resources could we create? Or, what do you think you would need as a parent, Roxanne?
Yeah, absolutely. So an example of that, right? Us going to the community, asking, what is it that we can do to help you as we connect you online? One of the things that we actually did most recently in the years is we realized that many of our Connect to Compete customers were actually connecting to the internet for the very first time.
Right.
Okay, the connection's the first step. That digital literacy is step 2, right? We want to make sure that if they're online, they're making the most out of their internet connection. So one of the things that we did in response to that after surveying our Connect to Compete families was we created a digital academy that's free, available to anybody on our website, cox.com/connect to compete. It's bilingual, free tutorials. We partnered with other organizations like Common Sense Media to provide just digital literacy training, focusing on internet basics, social media, online safety, how to open up an internet browser and place the safety filters, how to open up an email account. I mean, the things that we probably...
You've already went 10 steps past what I know. I'm going to have to go watch your video, your tutorial.
Absolutely. They're free and available to everybody. And again, bilingual. Because again, we realized that connection was the first step. Right. Then we started listening to our families, our Connect to Compete families, and we realized a lot of them, again, were connecting to the internet for the very first time. We realized that digital literacy was a big piece to it. And it still continues to be, and not just for the parents, for the teachers. I mean, we realize this is another piece of the big puzzle when we talk about the digital divide.
I remember 2 years ago at the Chief Science Officers Leadership Training Institute at ASU, I was trying to take a selfie video and I didn't know how to use my cell phone. I didn't know I had to hold the button or hold the screen the whole time. And the students, I'm telling you, these, 13 to 17-year-olds are laughing hysterically at me, but I did not know my phone well enough. And I feel like I'm pretty tech savvy for the most part. But I could not imagine if I didn't know how to turn on my computer, how intimidated I would be as, a 40-year-old woman to be able to turn to, if I had children, to say, honey, can you show me how to turn it on? And I think that is the next piece of how do we really let people know it's okay if you don't know? Because so many people are intimidated or embarrassed or concerned that they're going to, be not left out. But I think there's I don't know. How are you guys feeling about that topic? You've grown up with a device in your hand probably, right?
Yeah. Well, I definitely think if you were to need help in that area, definitely accepting the fact that you do in the first place is definitely very important.
But do you think these adults, they just have no, how do you feel as a student looking at us who I grew up with a rotary phone. Let's be honest, right? 2, 4, and sometimes 7. So when, we didn't have cable, my parents still live in the boonies, and, Verizon, I'll go home, but I have to go to the top of the hill or on the second story to be able to get reception. So I think there's, still places across the United States and definitely around the world that are still in that space, right? So Verizon, very strong connection. But when I drive down the hill and I'm in the boonies of Western New York, it's not happening. So yeah, I worry about those people that are afraid to get a device or afraid to get with technology just because they're intimidated saying, I don't know how to use the device. So.
Well, and I think one of the things that we did, or what we focused on, one of the things we were grateful when the governor put his stay-in-home order in place for a couple of weeks is that he left many of our stores open as essential services.
Right.
We also trained many of our store folks to turn into customer service reps. And so what we wanted to do was to make sure that if anybody called, again, I got a new phone or my phone is broken, I don't know how to use it, especially those first-time users or the elderly, So, for example, my mother, every problem under the sun, my Verizon phone's not working. Did you turn it on? How do I turn it on?
Exactly.
It's the button on the side because I got in her new phone. The button used to be on the top.
There's
now it's
4
on the
buttons
side.
on the side of this right here.
And only 2 of them tell the government exactly where you are.
Okay, cool.
But just in case anybody's listening.
I don't think I installed the update, so I don't think it's working.
No, it's so there's a challenge around how to navigate a phone, especially if it's new, or what if it breaks or what happens. And so a lot of ones that I would call my mother or the grandmothers or whatnot of the world. They aren't comfortable calling on the phone and speaking to somebody or texting what the problem is or having somebody walk them through or viewing a YouTube video because it doesn't. They like
when you sent it to her, right? When you gave your mom the new phone, I'm holding here my Samsung Galaxy S10e that work provided. I don't know all of the cool gadgets on here either. Nope. And so when you send it to your mother or when you present it to her, I don't think when you look at it, back in the old days, my very first cell phone had actually push buttons and it said PWR. And I used to show that to my middle schoolers and they would be like, how do you turn it on? And, they had the little power or the antenna that you pulled out.
Yeah.
So the idea that now we're putting devices in the hands of people who came from the rotary or no telephone, era, these slick little devices that they're literally a computer in your hand. How are we preparing them? And I would love for us to maybe even collaborate on, that elderly community. We have so many here in Arizona that, potentially having CSF, again, if you're interested, right, training the elderly of how do you use FaceTime? I know that was a conversation. There were other messenger apps, I think, that were, helping the grandparents stay connected. But
well, and it's one of the things we early on, the Attorney General, so we go back to the elderly and how do we do it is not only are we looking at kids and education, building the gap and making sure the network works and all this other stuff. Unfortunately, big times of emergency when people are kind of looking here is when the bad guys are surfing in and taking advantage of the most vulnerable. So of course we've seen, spam calls, different things like that, where people are trying to rob grandma and grandma of their funds. And so one of the things that we've done is we've worked not only internally as a company to kind of address those, and really we have gone and we've made significant inroads in being able to do that. We've millions of calls that we've stopped, spam calls and different things like that. But additionally, here locally, we were able to work with the Attorney General, kind of identifying some of the things that we're doing and having a discussion with his office on how do we move forward to make sure that we're doing that. Because oftentimes they found, and this is from their anecdotal stories, was for some reason they don't feel comfortable calling Verizon. They feel comfortable calling the AG. And the AG's office is like, well, you need to call Verizon, or you need to call T-Mobile, or you need to call Cox, or somebody. That's a you and them problem. We can't solve it because it's not our network. And so what we're looking at working with them on is kind of collaborating on how do we make sure that information is available. So maybe it's a landing page with them, or maybe they send them directly to us. But we want to make sure that there's that kind of that discussion with our local elected officials to make sure that, look, as you guys need this information, we're your partners. We want to help you because your constituents are our customers, and we want to make sure that they're safe, and it benefits everybody if we're both attacking the bad guys as opposed to trying to figure out what's going on and what's happening. So that's kind of the stuff that we're doing at a local level with some of the elected officials, not only also on the network side where we're kind of building a robust protection and filter system that ensures that these things don't get through. But as somebody says, we have to be right 100% of the time. Bad guys only have to be right once.
Right.
So, sometimes the odds don't work in our favor, but we do like working and collaborating with some of the locals to make sure that we're protecting our customers as well.
Do you find that at Cox too, that you're, when you have installers out or you're having, new customers at Cox that you have to walk them through, like your customer service? Both of your organizations have customer service opportunities and the chat boxes and all those good things. But do you find that the elderly connection, they're really concerned about understanding what's safe and what's not safe?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, all vulnerable populations, we want to make sure we're taking care of them. And so again, our digital academy is actually open to all. It's not just parents with students. It's not just for students.
Right.
It's for those who want to learn just internet basics and, internet safety. All of those tutorials are online, available for anybody who is interested in learning more.
Yeah. And we just, like I said, we are having these STEM community lunchtime conversations. We just talked about cybersecurity and, what can you do to protect yourself? So the one thing I thought about were passwords too, right? Mm-hmm. That idea of, being creative with your password, remembering what it is and not sharing it or putting it in a place that somebody could find it. And there are just so many different things that, it's multi-layered, but we just really appreciate that both of you are on the call tonight. And, to our listeners, we encourage you to get involved in the STEM community. Maybe you're an industry professional seeking ways to make an impact, a student searching for a mentor or a community collaborator, hoping to meet the right people to help make it happen. We want to help you get connected. So are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners, Matt, about Verizon, things that you're hoping to work on here in the upcoming months, or, just in general, tips or advice?
Well, you kind of put me on the spot, so I'll start off with Verizon is awesome. If you are not a Verizon customer, you should absolutely be. But no, I just want to say that it's wonderful in the short time that I've worked for the company. It's wonderful to be part of a community culture, of a corporate culture that runs to the problem and looks for solutions, that really empowers its employees to be problem solvers and community involved and community engagers. And so those are the kind of things that I think that we will continue to do. And I would encourage those that have ideas or challenges or problems or different things like that, feel free to reach out to your local, either call online, look online, reach out to customer services and whatnot. We're here to serve you and make sure that we can kind of get through this together. And Verizon remains committed to building not only the strongest network, but also to ensure that all of its customers are treated in the best way possible. So
that's awesome. We really appreciate you being here. What about you, Roxanne?
Yeah, Cox's commitment to our community is stronger than ever, especially in these new times that we're living. And so our efforts to help bridge the digital divide will continue to be of a strong focus for us. So I encourage anybody who's interested in taking advantage of our low-cost internet to please visit our website, call our 1-855 number. If you know of a family member, a neighbor who would be interested in taking advantage of it, please do so. Or if you're a nonprofit partner who can share this resource within your network, again, we just want to make sure that we're helping as many families have the right tools that they need for their students this upcoming school year.
Absolutely. I agree. What about you, Valentina? Any words of wisdom for the upcoming school year or any of your chief science officers out there?
Well, I kind of liked how, I think it was you who mentioned it, Matt, and we're all in this together. So it's definitely, I think we should keep that mentality and to keep those creative solutions and out of the box ideas in mind. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think, starting the conversation is important, right? Staying together. I read a quote earlier this morning I was reading from Henry Ford, right? Like working together is part of it and staying together is success, right? And really actually doing something. So we just really want to make sure everybody knows how to get in touch with both Matt and Roxanne, right? Verizon and Cox, incredible companies that we work with here at SciTech Institute. And, they've really supported the Chief Science Officers program, mentorship, engaging on Zoom and on science calls during the pandemic, and, participating in STEM community lunchtime conversations. So we really appreciate both of you, all of the work that's being done by our tech companies to be innovative and support Arizona learners across the state and, provide those resources, the information required to stay safe in this current pandemic. And with the hopes of school coming back in session at some sort of normalcy, that finding that right balance of what happens next and, how can we stay connected, like you mentioned, and work together. We're in it together. And so we want to thank you for joining us for this episode of STEM Unplugged, exploring tech companies supporting our communities. We appreciate both Matt and Roxanne and my co-host, CSO of the Year, Valentina, for being on the show. If you would like more information, contact us at scitechinstitute.org. This is your host, Kelly Green, and we would be glad to discuss how you can get connected.